I wanted to talk about the role of technology in education. I'm perhaps the best person to talk about this. I'm a professor of innovation. I have many, many degrees, been many years in the educational effort. I'm also building the reciprocity platform, something that is going to change the way that education actually works to make it happier, more joyous, particularly in the research game. So, the role of technology in education. First of all, I think I should probably define these two things. My view is really, really different on these particular things. Well, on technology, it's really just knowledge. It's really looking at the world and looking at the things that are at your fingertips using your five senses and looking at it as a way that can be applicable in some sort of way. It's not necessarily all that different from conventional definitions, but it's this embodiment of knowledge where you see that you can solve problems. And the way that you can solve problems and the way that you can see things around you is through education. Now, education, my view, is really different here. Most people sort of view education as sort of building up of different, I would say, different frameworks, different knowledge, different languages is probably the best way to see it, in different narratives. But in my view, is and I like this view a little bit more. It is the ability to puzzle about things, to ponder, to think about things. And if you come into it as thinking about, I am going to ponder or puzzle or look at something and wonder what's going on, you have to come at it in many different ways. In fact, that's actually the original way that a lot of people looked at education, right? If you go back to the monks many years ago that were doing this, and the people that discovered the Americas, for example, it was puzzling, right? Like all of these things were just kind of curiosities that we're looking at. We're sort of wondering, why does this happen, right? The original question behind education is, why does God exist, right? Like, why is it that all of this actually exists? What's going on here? And the puzzling is the thing that sort of drives a lot of people to do things, right? It's not the knowledge, it's not the acquisition of knowledge, but it's the puzzling of things and thinking about things. And us as human beings, we like to use this stuff, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, there's always some sort of practical use of why we're actually doing the things that we're doing. And so technology fits together quite strongly with education. We don't have one without the other, right? The reason why we have technology to sort of solve the problems around us and look at the world around us in a slightly different way so that we can become, I wouldn't say more productive. I don't like that terminology because productivity gets warped. It's not about success either. A lot of the things that we do are not for success, but more of who we actually are, right? So, that technology could be used to make people more meaner, by the way. And we're just using those to leverage those, right? If you think about things like social media, right? Using YouTube, for example. Well, I'm just getting more people to listen to what I have to say rather than just talking to my phone that's sitting on a can on top of a cereal box. That's true. That's actually what I'm doing. So, the idea with what we're actually doing here and how we understand what is the role of technology in education, I think the key thing with all of this, and this is where it becomes very hard for many of us, the instructors, for example, and the students, is that we get caught up in the available technology. We get caught up with what's happening right now, and we have strong emotions with what's actually happening right now. But the truth is, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly, I'm going to tell you this, it's constantly a pain in the ass. You're constantly looking at it. And when you finally get good at something, it's going to change. And the reason is that all of this is evolving. There is always people that are pondering. There's always people that are thinking of new things. There is always somebody around the world. And as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more people, which I think eventually is going to slow down. But, once we get to 11 or 12 billion people on this earth, we're going to have many more things that we're going to discover. And it's going to be a lot more quicker. And we're going to use tools that we have at our fingertips a little bit better than what we did before. And these tools are going to allow us to look in many different ways. And so what ends up happening because of technology, it's going to allow us to go in different dimensions. It's going to be harder for us to understand everything that exists, but we never understood that anyways, right? We understand the world personally. We understand the world at our fingertips, and sometimes we sort of ponder, well, why did that happen? And then we Google it, right? Many years ago, we couldn't Google it. And we just kind of pondered it, right? So how it actually affects us, individually in terms of our success in what we actually do, I honestly don't know. I don't think it has a tremendous impact at any given moment, but I also think it has a phenomenal impact at any given moment. Let me explain, right? So my life, how I live it today, is not a heck of a lot different than I would have lived it just even 20 years ago. But how I live my life is quantumly different than the life my parents or even my grandparents lived. It is extremely different. And that's not just because of the career choice I had, but it's because of the access to the technologies that I actually have. The fact that I can actually talk to you and there be somebody out there that would listen, that is an interesting thing that nobody else had access to. The fact that I have clothing right now that's completely synthetic, which I don't like. I like cotton clothing, but you can't even buy cotton clothing anymore. It's getting harder and harder to find these things. The technology that we have at our fingertips allows us to see the world differently. But the fact that we ponder and see the world differently allows us to see the technology differently as well. So it's a big mishmash of how things actually fit together. This is called an endogenous process. Fancy word, just basically means that they sort of feed into each other. And it's very difficult to sort of put one thing without the other. We often talk about things like technology trajectories, how things evolve over time, but there's not a linear path with any of these things. It's a big, messy process. And we struggle as people that study technology, that study innovation, we struggle to sort of put bounds on all of this stuff. But let me go back to, what is the role of technology in education? I think it's ultimately to allow us to see a little bit differently, allow us to extend ourselves a little bit more, or maybe retract ourselves a little bit more, but also to be able to ponder even just a little bit more than what we did before, or maybe not ponder. Maybe we don't want to do that. But the truth is that they're interweaving together, that there is a strong role between technology and education. You can't have one without the other. And that these will continue to be important in our lives for many, many years to come, no matter what that education looks like, no matter what the technology looks like. It's still going to be critically important at any moment of our life, just like it was 5,000 years ago. Those were important as well. Learning how to discover the world, know what plants to eat, that's education, right? We used to pass that along between our ancestors. People would just talk, much like we do today. Understanding how to use a stick or how to make a flint into an arrow, that's technology. And we needed the education to understand how to actually do that. So these things are deeply interwoven. They're interwoven to the way that we communicate. They're critically important to our lives. And do I think that this is ever going to disappear in terms of this role? No. Do I think that I can explain it and put it down on a piece of paper in a very short period? No. There is a lot to learn. We're continuously learning about the impact between these two, and it's messy and complicated, and that's actually a good thing. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.